It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, folks, today we're going to jump on that gigantic, sharp, interactive board. I want to go through Kodak's FY 2023 and their first quarter for FY 2024. Kodak, I'm looking at their numbers. I'm thinking about what they're doing in the industrial print space. And as I look at their numbers and the detail they give in those numbers, I'm convinced more than ever that Ricoh and Konica Minolta need to get the hell out of the industrial print space. They need to shut it down and stop doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, they've been doing it for a long time. And when you look at the revenue coming out of Kodak and the way Kodak breaks out that revenue, I think you're all going to agree with me that both Ricoh and Konica Minolta should not be in industrial print. So without any further ado, let's just jump on the board. I'll share what I put together. The top line revenue for their FY 2023 for the print business was $828 million. They had a 2.4% operating profit of $20 million. But ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that they show on the 10K and the 10Qs in the Kodak Investor Relations section, they break out the revenue. They break out the annuities. Plates, inks, and other consumables represent 69% of the $828 million. Ongoing service agreements, arrangements, 22.3% of the total revenue. Total annuities is 91.3%, $756 million of the $828 million that Kodak billed in the print business is annuity-based. And folks, I started thinking about this. How much equipment is Ricoh and Konica Minolta selling? We heard the rumor, and I shared it on a recent episode. And, Konica Minolta never clarified whether this was true or not, so I'm thinking it's probably true. They were embarrassed to say it. But Konica Minolta had a whole bunch of those KM1s, a machine that's already, 10 years old nearly? And they had put them out on demo or trial because they couldn't sell them? That's just crazy stuff. But it's starting to make sense when you think about their lack of revenue, because neither Ricoh or Konica Minolta can produce any revenue in the industrial print space. I mean, let's do the comparison. Total revenue for industrial print for Ricoh for FY 2023 was $256.2 million. Total revenue industrial print for Konica Minolta for FY 2023 was $241.6 million. If you put them both together, Kodak spanks them. But here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, in the Kodak's 10K, it shared with you how much they did in equipment sales for FY 2023, and it was $72 million. It represented 8.7% of Kodak's print revenue. $72 million in equipment and software, but that's mostly equipment. That's where the big dollars are generated, right? So you got to ask yourself a question. If Ricoh had 8.7% of their revenue coming from equipment, they would have sold $22.3 million in equipment. Ricoh, tell us what the number is. You should be so proud of it. You've been in the industrial print space for so long. You're excited about it. You want to convince investors that you should stay in it. Then I think you should start breaking out those numbers. You should share with the whole world how much you sold in equipment and software in your industrial print space for FY 2023. Our friends over at Konica Minolta, that would have been $21 million at 8.7%. Did you sell $21 million worth of industrial print equipment? And you can't count the stuff you put out there on trial that you didn't sell. But ladies and gentlemen, you see why it's so important that these numbers get broken out more. You see why it's so important that both Ricoh and Konica Minolta truly consider that I could be right, that maybe they really should dump these industrial print programs. Let's look at the first quarter. The first quarter for our friends here at Kodak, they did $13 million in equipment revenue. $13 million. They did a total of $182 million in the print space, their first quarter. They did have a zero operating profit. It's never good to have a zero operating profit. But at the end of the day, what I believe is going on at Kodak is maybe they do get really aggressive on giving out the equipment. I don't think they just put stuff out there on trial and don't make people pay for the hardware, because you can see they are building up quite an annuities business. So maybe they decided to lowball some pricing this first quarter. We know we had Drupa. They were out there at the Drupa show. So was Konica Minolta. I'm sure all the people that went in that Konica Minolta booth We're probably trying to figure out how they could get a free trial as opposed to buying the machine. But ladies and gentlemen, you can clearly see that Kodak completely spanks both Ricoh and Konica Minolta, and that's my argument. Why is Ricoh and Konica Minolta still doing this? Let's think about this Konica Minolta. In the spring of 2016, they kick off the KM1. It's going to change their world. 8 years later, it seems like the K1 is pretty damn irrelevant, along with the sales from it. I mean, it's been 8 years, right? May 16, 2024, the Acura Jet, 60,000. Holy smokes, going to change the game. Ladies and gentlemen, they're not doing enough revenue at Konica Minolta to justify this. They're just not doing it. Their financials have literally been a train wreck for 5 years. What is Konica doing? And I know a lot of folks, they get upset. Ray's always beating on Konica. I'm trying to prove a point. You got the worst financial performing OEM in our industry, a company called Konica Minolta, getting into industrial print. When they've been in industrial print since 2016 and 8 years of being in it with this KM1, what have they actually accomplished? What have they accomplished? Our friends at Brother with their Domino industrial business unit, crushing both Konica Minolta and Ricoh. Folks, the industry definitely has to transition. It has to add other products to its portfolio. But I believe with all of my heart that both Ricoh and Konica Minolta have no business whatsoever in the industrial print space. And their numbers seem to prove that I'm right, especially when you start comparing them to some other folks. They were all there in Dusseldorf, Germany. I've seen some reviews coming about the show. Some of them good, some of them bad. But at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we can't have an oversaturation in the industrial print space. We can't have OEMs, and I believe this to be the case of Ricoh and Konica Minolta, with very, very low maturity level, let's just call it that. A very low maturity level in that space, going in that space and kind of bastardizing the market. That's not going to help the market grow. That's not going to help the other players in the market. And I urge the other players in the market to put the pressure on both Ricoh and Konica. Put pressure on them like you've never put pressure on them before. Because neither one of those two belong in the industrial print space. We'll see how the numbers pan out for Kodak for FY 2024. But everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.